For years, Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez weren't just another celebrity couple. They were the celebrity couple. Millions of fans watched them grow up in front of the world. They watched the dates, the red carpets, the breakups, the reunions. And every time the two found their way back to each other, fans believed the same thing: maybe this time they'll finally make it work. But then came 2018 and something was different. There was no dramatic reunion, no surprise appearance, no obvious second chance. Instead, within months, Justin Bieber was engaged to Hailey Baldwin, leaving millions of fans asking one question: how did the love story everyone thought would last actually come to an end? Was it timing? Was it emotional exhaustion? Was the pressure of fame simply too much? Or had Justin and Selena reached a point where caring about each other was no longer enough to keep the relationship alive? Today, we're taking a closer look at the final chapter of one of Hollywood's most talked about relationships, and why the ending may have been much more complicated than fans realized. Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez first became linked around 2010 at the time. Both were incredibly young and already becoming major stars. Justin had transformed from a teenage YouTube sensation into one of the biggest names in pop music. Selena was balancing acting, music, and an increasingly massive international fan base. At first, they denied the dating rumors. They said they were friends, but photographers kept spotting them together. And eventually, it became almost impossible to hide what was happening. In early 2011, they made their relationship public, and almost immediately the world became obsessed. They attended events together, they went on vacations, they supported each other's careers. And to millions of young fans, they looked like the perfect celebrity couple. But there was one major problem. Their relationship wasn't happening in private. It was happening in front of the entire world. Every photograph became a headline. Every breakup became a trending topic. Every social media post was analyzed for clues. Every song was examined for hidden meanings. Fans even gave the couple a nickname: Jelena. For many people, they represented young love. But behind the glamorous photographs was a relationship dealing with pressures that most outsiders could never fully understand. Both Justin and Selena were growing up while millions of people watched. Justin's career was exploding. During the Believe era, his fame reached another level entirely. He was touring constantly. The media followed him everywhere. His personal behavior became headline news. And the pressure of being one of the world's biggest young celebrities was enormous. Selena was dealing with her own challenges. She was trying to build her identity as an actress and musician while also maintaining some sense of normality in her private life. And eventually, their relationship became an emotional cycle. They would fall in love. They would separate. They would reconnect. Then they would break apart again. Every reunion created hope. Fans thought they had finally grown enough to make things work. But every breakup suggested that deeper issues remained. Reports at the time frequently mentioned things like long-distance schedules, trust, emotional maturity, and the overwhelming pressure of living under constant public attention. But here's the part that's important. Neither Justin nor Selena publicly revealed every detail of their disagreements. That means much of what fans believed came from media reports, sources, and speculation, not direct confirmation from the two people actually involved. Still, both stars eventually acknowledged that those years had been complicated. Justin spoke about personal struggles he experienced during his younger years. Selena spoke about emotional exhaustion and the importance of protecting her well-being. Looking back, it becomes easier to understand why their relationship may have become so difficult. They weren't simply two people trying to maintain a romance. They were two young people trying to figure themselves out while the entire planet had an opinion about their relationship. And then, after years of going back and forth, something unexpected happened. Late 2017, Justin and Selena started spending time together again. Suddenly, fans saw photographs of them having breakfast. They were seen at church. They rode bicycles. They appeared to be enjoying quiet moments together. And almost overnight, the internet exploded. Jelena was back. For fans who had waited years for another reunion, this looked different. Justin appeared more focused on faith and personal growth. Selena had experienced major personal challenges, including a kidney transplant, and many fans believed those experiences had changed her perspective on life. Maybe they had both matured. Maybe they had finally learned from their mistakes. Maybe, After all these years, they were finally ready. For a brief moment, it seemed possible. But appearances can be deceiving. Because while fans were celebrating every photograph, the emotional history between Justin and Selena hadn't magically disappeared. Years of misunderstandings, years of public scrutiny, years of personal struggles, years of emotional pain. None of that could simply disappear because two people started spending time together again. Their reunion may have reopened old wounds that had never completely healed. And by early 2018, signs of trouble began appearing again. Reports suggested that Justin and Selena were spending less time together. Some reports pointed toward disagreements over lifestyle. Others mentioned emotional exhaustion. There were also reports suggesting that family members had concerns about the relationship. But again, the exact details were never fully confirmed. And that's where this story gets interesting. Because this time, something felt different. This wasn't simply another breakup. For years, fans had watched Justin and Selena separate only to find their way back to each other. But now, neither appeared to be fighting publicly to keep the relationship alive. There were no dramatic public arguments, no obvious social media war, no huge confrontation. Instead, there was silence. By spring 2018, Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez had gone their separate ways once again. And fans assumed it was temporary. After all, hadn't they done this before? They had broken up before. They had taken time apart before. They had reunited before. So why would this time be any different? But according to the source transcript, people close to the situation suggested that both had reached a difficult realization. They could care deeply about each other and still be unable to make the relationship work. And perhaps that was the hardest truth of all. Sometimes love doesn't disappear. Sometimes two people simply realize that continuing the same cycle could create even more pain. Then came the moment nobody expected. Only a few months after the breakup, Justin Bieber was seen spending time with Hailey Baldwin. At first, many assumed they were simply reconnecting. After all, Justin and Hailey had known each other for years. But then everything changed. In July 2018, reports emerged that Justin and Hailey were engaged. And within minutes, the internet was flooded with questions. For fans who had spent nearly a decade believing Justin and Selena would eventually end up together, the news was almost impossible to process. Had Justin really moved on? Was the engagement rushed? Had he already decided what his future would look like? And perhaps the biggest question, was Selena truly the end of Justin's past? The timing made people speculate. But speculation isn't the same thing as proof. Justin and Hailey did not publicly suggest that their engagement was some kind of direct response to Selena. Justin later described feeling certain about his future and wanting to commit to the relationship. Still, fans couldn't ignore how quickly everything had happened. And while the internet searched for someone to blame, Selena Gomez made a decision that surprised many people. She didn't publicly attack Justin. She didn't publicly attack Hailey. She didn't turn the breakup into a public battle. Instead, she largely focused on herself. And that may have been the beginning of an entirely different chapter, because Selena wasn't just losing a relationship. She was discovering who she was without it. And what happened next would change the way millions of people viewed her. By the end of 2018, something had become undeniable. The cycle had stopped. For nearly a decade, Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez had repeatedly found their way back to each other. But now, there were no realistic signs of another reunion. No secret meetings. No obvious public appearances together. No indication that the relationship was about to restart. The story that millions of fans had followed for years had reached its final chapter. And yet, people still wanted someone to blame. Was Justin responsible? Was Selena responsible? Was Hailey responsible? Was the pressure from their families responsible? The truth may be much less dramatic and much more human. There may not have been one villain. There may not have been one single moment that destroyed everything. Instead, their relationship appears to have been shaped by timing, personal growth, emotional struggles, intense public scrutiny, and two people who were changing as they grew older. Justin moved into a completely different chapter. In September 2018, he married Hailey Baldwin, now known as Hailey Bieber. The timing surprised many people, because it came so soon after his final breakup with Selena. But Justin later spoke about entering a different stage of life and wanting to build a future based on commitment, faith, and personal growth. His journey wasn't necessarily simple. Behind the fame, music, money, and millions of fans was someone trying to understand himself after years of living under extraordinary pressure. And while Justin was beginning a new chapter, Selena was doing something equally important. She was rebuilding her own life. Instead of immediately defining herself through another relationship, Selena appeared to focus on her health, career, personal growth, and independence. She continued making music. She continued acting. She expanded her influence beyond entertainment. And perhaps most importantly, she became increasingly open about her personal struggles and the importance of emotional well-being. Her story began shifting. She was no longer simply being discussed as Justin Bieber's former girlfriend. She was becoming known for her own achievements, her own projects, her own identity. And that transformation became one of the biggest consequences of their breakup. But then came another chapter of the story that lasted for years. The online rivalry between Selena Gomez and Hailey Bieber. For years, fans created a competition between the two women. Every Instagram post became a clue. Every interview was analyzed. Every public appearance was compared. People searched for hidden messages. And sometimes, they turned completely unrelated moments into evidence of a supposed feud. But the reality was far more complicated. Neither woman had publicly asked for millions of strangers to turn their lives into a competition. Eventually, both Selena and Hailey addressed the negativity surrounding the situation. Hailey explained that she didn't want constant comparisons and didn't want people creating unnecessary hate between women. Selena also encouraged her fans to be kinder and stop spreading negativity. And that revealed something bigger about celebrity culture. Sometimes audiences become so emotionally invested in a story that they forget the people inside that story are real human beings. They have feelings. They have private struggles. They make mistakes. And they deserve the ability to move forward. That's especially important when discussing Justin and Selena. Because outsiders will probably never know every detail of what happened between them. And maybe they aren't supposed to. Justin has acknowledged that his younger years were complicated. He has spoken about learning important lessons about love, responsibility, and maturity. Selena has also reflected on past experiences and how they helped shape the person she became. So perhaps the biggest truth behind their breakup isn't who won. It's what both people learned. Their relationship wasn't simply a story of success or failure. It was a chapter. A major chapter. A painful chapter at times. A meaningful chapter. But still a chapter. And that's why their story continues to fascinate people years later. Millions of fans grew up watching them. They saw two teenagers become global superstars. They watched the romance unfold through interviews, concerts, photographs, and social media. They experienced every reunion alongside them. And every breakup felt personal to people who had invested years in the story. But maybe that's exactly why the ending was so difficult. Fans weren't only saying goodbye to Justin and Selena as a couple. They were saying goodbye to an era. The era when everyone believed these two young stars might eventually grow old together. But life doesn't always follow the ending people imagine. Sometimes two people can genuinely care about each other and still choose different paths. Sometimes a relationship teaches you something without becoming permanent. Sometimes the person you once thought would be part of your entire future becomes someone who belongs to an important chapter of your past. And that doesn't necessarily make the relationship meaningless. It makes it human. Justin and Selena were young when they fell in love. They were still figuring themselves out. They were growing while millions of people watched. And eventually, they reached a point where moving forward separately appeared to be the better choice. The biggest mistake would be reducing that entire story to one dramatic explanation. Because relationships are rarely that simple. There isn't always one betrayal. There isn't always one argument. There isn't always one person who destroyed everything. Sometimes the story is simply two people growing in different directions. And perhaps that is what happened here. Their final breakup wasn't necessarily about one person being the villain and the other being the victim. It was a complicated combination of timing, pressure, personal struggles, emotional history, and changing priorities. And maybe that's why their story still feels so real. Because millions of people have experienced some version of the same thing. They know what it's like to care about someone, but realize that the relationship isn't working. They know what it's like to look back and wonder what could have happened if circumstances had been different. They know what it's like to move forward, while part of the past remains unforgettable. That's the real reason the Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez story continues to generate conversation. Not because fans necessarily know every private detail. They don't. But because the relationship became a symbol of young love, fame, heartbreak, and growing up. And eventually, both Justin and Selena had to become more than the couple the world knew. They had to become individuals. Justin built a new life. Selena built her own path. And whatever people may believe about their past, the public story eventually became less about whether they would reunite and more about what they would do with their separate futures. So, was their final breakup caused by timing? Emotional exhaustion? Family concerns? Personal growth? The pressure of fame? Or simply the realization that they had become different people? Based on what is publicly known, there isn't one confirmed answer that explains everything. And that's important. Because when millions of people are watching a relationship from the outside, it's easy to believe we know the whole story. But we don't. What we see are photographs, interviews, songs, headlines, public appearances. The private conversations belong to the people who were actually there. And perhaps the most respectful conclusion is also the simplest one. Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez loved each other, grew together, struggled together, and eventually chose different paths. Their story may not have ended the way fans wanted. But that doesn't mean it had no meaning. Some relationships last forever. Others change you forever. And sometimes the most unforgettable love stories aren't the ones where two people stay together. They're the ones where two people enter each other's lives, leave an enormous impact, and eventually learn how to move forward. Justin and Selena's story began as a teenage romance watched by the entire world. It ended with two individuals choosing different futures. And while fans may always wonder what could have happened if things had been different, the reality is that both eventually continued building lives beyond the relationship that once defined them. So perhaps the untold truth isn't some shocking secret. Maybe it's something much more complicated. They simply grew into different versions of themselves. And sometimes, that's enough to end even the most famous love story in the world. What do you think really ended Justin and Selena's relationship? Was it the pressure of fame, their repeated history, timing, or simply the fact that they grew apart? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into Hollywood's biggest relationships and the stories behind the headlines, make sure you stay tuned for the next one.